that. Now it is a privilege and a blessing to introduce you to our guest mediator this evening, Miss Cece. Miss Cece, it's in your hand.
Okay, can everybody hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
You can hear me. Okay, because I'm not on my headphones, so I just want to make sure that you can hear me and my audio is correct.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, so this is a very important election that's coming up. I see that we have Simone Levine, who is a candidate for the criminal court seat, what's that, Division A, if I'm not mistaken, correct?
Yes.
And we also are anticipating Mr. Roché, Leon T. Roché II, to come. Is he here?
Yes, I'm here.
Oh, there you are. Okay, and I understand that Miss Kelly's not going to be able to make it. She had a prior engagement, so we have you guys, and we can get started right now. I will start by saying that Simone is a major case prosecutor for Orleans Parish District Attorney, and you, Mr. Roché, a criminal defense attorney, as I understand it, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, well, we're gonna, I don't want to be discriminatory about it, but we're gonna start with ladies first, if you don't mind.
Not at all.
I'm gonna ask both of you guys the same question. You first, Simone. So why are you running for this seat?
Thank you so much, Ms. Cece. I appreciate the opportunity. And is there a time requirement on the questions?
There is a time requirement. You have 2 minutes. Each one of you guys will have 2 minutes, and I would hope Val would jump in with the timing.
Okay. So the reason why I had decided to run in this race is because I have been monitoring criminal district court as the director of Court Watch NOLA for over 6 years. And what I see in criminal district court is the community is not represented. I don't think community is heard. I think that the courts are like a machine. I think they spit people out, whether they are victims, whether they are witnesses, whether they are defendants. I think oftentimes it's a case of numbers and it's not about human beings. And I think that human beings need to be heard from. I think that safety has to be preserved. And I think defendants' constitutional rights absolutely have to be established in court, listened to, and that we create a very different court, a court where transparency is key, a court where community is allowed in, and where we think about the future, because we have incredible violence in the street. I think that we have unfairness in the court, and I think we have to create different models. And I am that judge. I am the one judge that has experience on both the prosecution side as well as on the defense side. I also have experience working as an independent police monitor, and as an independent police monitor, and also as the monitor of the New Orleans criminal courts in general. And so I've seen what's gone wrong in those courts. I have solutions for those problems, and those are the solutions I want to put into effect. Thank you.
Okay, Attorney Roché, your turn. Why are you running?
Yeah, so my name is Leon Roché, and I'm from the West Bank, born and raised. I currently live uptown, and I'm running for this seat. Well, let me just say this. I've been a public defender for the last 13 years here in New Orleans. And the reason I wanted to be a public defender is because I wanted to provide the same type of representation for people who could not afford to pay for a lawyer as people who could, because I don't think the type of representation a person gets should be based on how much money they have. I'm the only candidate in this race that has been a public defender in Louisiana. And I have fought tooth and nail for the citizens and the people of New Orleans to provide great representation to all of our people to try to, make sure that their constitutional rights have been upheld. The 13th Amendment abolished slavery except as punishment for a crime. So to me, that meant if they can punish you for a crime, they can enslave you again. I always wanted to be a freedom fighter. I, unlike my opponent, have never been a prosecutor, and that's by choice. For 13 years, I have fought for the rights of our citizens of New Orleans to make sure that they have fair trials and fair proceedings. And if I'm blessed to get on the bench, I'm going to continue to fight to make sure that we have fair trials and fair proceedings so we can prevent wrongful convictions. You know, no one wins when we have a wrongful conviction. You have the citizen who's wrongfully convicted. You have the victims who thought that the right person was, arrested and sentenced. And then you have the community at whole that also loses, because if we don't get it right, the real criminal is still out in the community committing crimes. So we want to have, we want to prevent wrongful convictions. I have the experience and knowledge to do that because I've been practicing law exclusively for 13 years at criminal district court, fighting for people's rights. And that's why I'm running for this seat, because experience matters. I'm the most experienced candidate in this race, and I want to make sure we have fair trials and fair outcomes and proceedings. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So the next, it's very interesting because what you just said, because I want to know, and I'm going to go to Simone at this moment, and I hope you guys don't mind me calling you by your first name. Attorney Levine, correct?
You should just call me Simone, CC. I've known you for a while.
Well, but let's let everybody understand that both of you guys are attorneys. And so the next question, if how as a judge, how are you going to be able to weigh cases fairly, and not be that prosecutor or not be that defense attorney on the bench? How, for example, in a carjacking or a murder, what factors might you consider in sentencing? And that's the piece. Do you agree with mandatory minimum sentencing? If not, how can you use your discretion to maybe not, go in for that? Because it's been found unconstitutional in Pennsylvania, as I understand it. So, go.
So, and you want me to speak first, right, Ms. Cece?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm against mandatory minimum sentencing. And if I was elected as a judge and I was invited to give testimony up in Baton Rouge, I would definitely be testifying against mandatory minimums, especially when it comes to second-degree murder cases. I think every case is an individual case. I think you have to take individual circumstances, the evidence into consideration, the defendant's past record into consideration. But first and foremost, community, what is absolutely the most important thing to me is to make sure that we hear from the community. And when I say the community, I mean defendant's family, defendant's community, victims community, witnesses, the larger community, churches, pastors who are coming in, who absolutely see who it is that's terrorizing community and who deserves a second chance. For me, it will be incredibly easy to be a fair and an equal and an even-handed judge because I have that experience on both sides. And what's more is that I have been an independent monitor of every single agency in that court. So that includes the sheriff's office, that includes the public defenders, that includes the private bar, that includes the police department, that includes the Louisiana State Police, that includes the judges, that includes the clerk of court's office. And so I know what goes on. I've been inside all of those agencies. I know when the prosecutors say something, when they say something, what is true and what is not true. I know when the public defender's office or the private defense bar, they say something that's true or is not true, because I have had that experience on both sides. I've won awards for my independent monitoring work, both national as well as local. I have been profiled by the St. Charles Magazine. I've won the City Business Lawyers Award, and for all of that independent monitoring work that I have done. So for me, it is actually the priority and the reason why I am running to be on the bench in order to be fair-minded, in order to get that. Because what we know is we know that our community right now are facing a great victimization. We do know that oftentimes defendants who are accused of these crimes in front of us, they're former victims that have never received treatment as well. But
Pardon me, that's time, Simone.
Okay, thank you. And we just need to take both of those into consideration.
Okay.
Thank you.
Attorney Leon Roché. II. I'm going to call you guys your whole name and your title.
Yes, ma'am. Well, let me say this. I do not have a problem holding people accountable when they are lawfully convicted. But my issue is that we want to make sure that people are having fair proceedings and having fair trials. You know, I've seen all too often, by being a public defender in criminal district court for 13 years, I've seen a lot of unfairness in the system. And, you know, that's what I want to prevent. So I've had over 100 trials. I've represented thousands of citizens in all matters of court proceedings, from preliminary exams, bond hearings, you know, mental competency hearings, rule of show causes, probation hearings, you name it, I've done it. So what I want to make sure I do as a judge is make sure we have fair proceedings, and that way we have fair trials, and then we can get the justice, the victims can get the justice they seek, and we can have closure. But we don't want someone going to jail for something they didn't, you know, commit, or evidence being ruled admissible that should have been inadmissible. And then, you know, years later, a higher court says, wait, the lower court got it wrong. Now, as far as the mandatory minimums, I'm also against mandatory minimums, because I think it takes the discretion away from the judge. You know, the Louisiana law already allows a wide latitude of sentencing ranges for judges, but when you throw in the habitual offender, you take the discretion away from the judge, and you now, someone who could get probation is now looking at maybe 10 years, you know, 15 years, crazy amounts of time in jail. And so that makes that person not want to go to trial to exercise their constitutional right that they have to go to trial, when they know that if they lose that trial, instead of probation, they're looking at 5 or 10 years in jail. So I'm against mandatory minimums. And as a judge, I have the ability to depart from the mandatory minimum if the defense attorney files a motion under Dorothy. So, and I think that's my answer to the question.
Okay, Attorney Simone Levine, there's a problem in Louisiana, and you guys both know this, because if you read any of my work, you know I've written many times about Louisiana incarcerating more people than anywhere else in the world. And I know you guys are going to become judges, so you're going for that judge seat. But what can be done about that? We have a black eye, you know, it's just very, very embarrassing to say we are the incarceration capital of the world. What can you do as you become a judge to impact that, or have something to say about that?
So we're not only the incarcerator of the world, although certainly we keep changing places with Oklahoma for that lovely award, but we also have the highest wrongful conviction rate of any county or parish in per capita in the United States. We also are the one of the top states that where more women have been killed than in any other state. We really hold all of these incredibly terrible awards, Cece. And, you know, it's one of the reasons why experience does count. I have been a criminal lawyer for 22 years, and oftentimes I am questioned by my opponent that I have not been practicing in criminal district court here in New Orleans. And the truth of the matter is that I think it's incredibly important to take models and experience from other states, because if we did do so well at Tulane and Broad, and we did do so well in Orleans, we would not be the top incarcerator in the country, and we would not have the top wrongful incarceration per capita in all of the United States for any county or parish. So as a judge, what I can do is I can listen to community, and I can ensure the community will actually be safe. And I can use some of the models that I've learned as director of Court Watch NOLA to ensure that we create new models that do come from other states. Louisiana should not be left behind. New Orleans should not be left behind. And I think that my experience from all different jurisdictions really can make a huge difference. We don't have a community-centered court here in New Orleans. We need to make victims and witnesses feel protected, and we need to make sure the defendants and their family members are heard.
Okay, Attorney Leon Roché II. your
Okay.
answer to the same question.
Yes, so we need to hold the state and the prosecutors accountable and make sure that they prove their case beyond a reasonable doubt. The reason why we have such a high incarceration rate in the city is because of the unscrupulous tactics of prosecutors in the prosecutorial office, where they withhold Brady, which is favorable evidence, and they use other tactics that are unconstitutional and that prevent the administration of fair trials. So, if you look at the history of the prosecutor's office in New Orleans, you'll see that there's been a lot of unscrupulous actions that have been taken that have led to these high conviction rates. And even when you look at the jury, like Louisiana is one of the only states that used to allow for non-unanimous jury verdicts. So they would suppress the will of the small minority. If you get one or two, minorities on the jury, they would suppress their will and they still were finding people guilty. You've got 1,500 people that's still sitting in jail on non-unanimous jury verdicts. So the way the laws are written and the tactics that the prosecution office uses, those account for a lot of the reasons why we have such high incarceration rates in this state. And they've committed egregious violations where they withheld favorable evidence and didn't turn it over to the defense like they should have. And so, it's like a one-sided fight. As a public defender, I know what it's like to be the underdog. I know what it's like to have to fight against the police, the DA investigators, the ATF, the FBI, everybody. It's one public defender versus the masses of the system. And then when the masses of the system don't abide by the laws that are on the books and don't turn over favorable evidence, then it's a one-sided fight. And so as a judge, I'm gonna make sure that they turn over Brady, they turn over the favorable evidence. And if they don't, there's gonna be some sanctions filed, because we're gonna make sure we have fair trials so that we can reverse this mass incarceration in this state.
So I take it that you are in favor of retroactivity when it comes down to the non-unanimous jurors.
Yes, I definitely am in favor of retroactivity when it comes to the non-unanimous jury verdict, because like I said, if one juror has reasonable doubt, then that means that there's reasonable doubt in the case. And the non-unanimous jury verdict was implemented by a racist system to suppress the vote of the one or two occasional minorities that might get on the jury. So I think it's egregious what has happened in the history of Louisiana. And I've always been a fighter for people's rights and a fighter against that system. I've never wanted to be a prosecutor. I always wanted to be a freedom fighter.
So should I answer that question too, Susie?
Yes, hold on, one moment. I wanted to ask you also for people who are not, and I'm sure you know the history of non-unanimous juries and the fact that, and what was it, 2018, that it was ruled unconstitutional, but only for the people who had been convicted that year and beyond. So that, as Attorney Leon Roché said, you've got 1,500 people sitting in jail still as a result of non-unanimous juries. So explain the history for the people and tell us if you are for or against retroactive treatment in non-unanimous juries.
So I am definitely in favor of retroactivity. And I think that everyone that had received a verdict, which was non-unanimous, should receive a new trial. Or honestly, if the evidence, just like the district attorney's office is doing right now, if the evidence is insufficient, that the individual should be released, either on a reduced plea or should be released, based on an acquittal, based on what the evidence is in front of the in front of the court. And I absolutely agree that we have a horrible history of oppression when it comes to our district attorney's office. And I am the only one that has received the incredible notoriety of being attacked by Leon Cannizzaro for calling him out. And I called him out when he incarcerated crime victims, when he incarcerated rape crime victims on phony DA subpoenas. Fort Watch NOLA was the one that wrote the report. I'm the only one that has had an op-ed that has been penned by District Attorney Leon Canizero against them. I'm the only person that had a press conference that was called by Leon Canizero where he used prejudicial language against me, and I had to have another agency even intervene because of the amount of threat that I had posed to his office and the history of oppression. So my history of trying to ensure that there are fair trials and that we do not proceed on with prejudiced evidence and forced evidence that does lead to wrongful conviction is known so well by this group because I've been speaking to this group for the last 10 years about that very one issue.
Well, and so while I have you, I'll ask the next question. Why is it that Louisiana has the harshest and longest sentencing guidelines? I know that that's a matter of the Louisiana legislature. I know that they're the reason we have this, but what can you do as a judge to deal with that?
So I'm so happy you asked this question. I have made it from the very beginning of my campaign. I have made a point of saying that we have to have a radical reduction of sentencing in Louisiana. I think the direct answer to your question, Cece, is because they've gotten away with it. I think that where something sounds scary, I think that a judge gives somebody life without the option of parole. And oftentimes it's our younger members of our community that are sentenced, and oftentimes they are facing life without the option of parole. I'm absolutely opposed to that. I absolutely think that victims are given no choice other than to say, okay, I'll go and proceed with the proceeding and the person will receive a maximum amount of sentence, or I can acquit and the person can walk the streets and the victim can feel unsafe. We have to completely reduce sentencing, and we have to take the victim's perspective into consideration on the crimes that are in front of the court. And so what I would say in direct answer to your question is because Baton Rouge gets away with it. If something sounds scary, then that time is increased and the mandatory minimum is added. If a judge has a case that sounds scary in front of them, then that individual receives a maximum punishment. I am the candidate that's had the courage to stand up against oppressive measures. I am the candidate that has been attacked for standing up against oppressive measures. And I am the candidate who will have the courage to stand up to reduce sentencing.
Okay, let me ask the same question of Attorney Leon Roché. The harshest sentencing in the United States that I'm aware of, and I only know that as an observer of, trials and other things, and people in other places get lesser sentences for the same crimes. What can you do on the bench? I understand it's a legislative thing. I understand that's the Louisiana legislature and they get away with it, but might you consider getting other judges together and, speaking truth to power and taking these legislators to task about it? Ms. Attorney Roché.
Okay, well, let me say this. I fought against Leon Canizero the entire time that he was the district attorney because I was a public defender the entire time fighting for all of my clients who they were, trying to multiple bill and send away for life sentences. But let me say this. I think one of the big problems in our system is the amount of evidence that is required in order, let me give an example, like the one witness rule. I have a problem with the one witness rule. All it takes is one witness to say they saw somebody do something, and then the police will write that up in a warrant and say, one witness identified this person as having committed the crime. And then they go arrest the person and they charge them with this crime. And then this case closed. And then this person will sit for years trying to, until he gets to a trial on that little scintilla of evidence, which is just one witness saying he did it. I think we need to require more evidence. We need to require the investigation that Alec Baldwin. Okay, that investigation went on for over a year. They had FBI analysis, all kind of scientific testing, all of this. But well, why can't we require the same type of investigations for our people here in Louisiana, in New Orleans, that's facing life in prison? We need to have serious investigations, and we need to require the police to produce serious evidence, something more than just the one witness or these suggestive identifications, or, that's what I think is a big part of the problem. So now we finally got body camera footage, and look at the difference that's making, because now we can see what's actually happening. And a lot of people are shocked that this stuff is going on, but we've been knowing that this has been going on because we've been the victim of these tactics by the police. So now that we, so as a judge, I can look at a warrant and I can be like, wait up. You mean to tell me, the police said he saw someone making furtive movements through a car and the tent had 5% tint around all the windows? I'm not buying that, okay? And so you mean, so we can evaluate these warrants where they just, just put down a little bit of evidence to make sure that, wait, we need to make sure we have sufficient evidence to detain people and hold them and to put them on trial. And let's stop, with the one witness rule and with the suggestive identifications.
Thank you for your answer. So the next question, I'll let you start and then we'll flip over to Attorney Levine. What is your experience with the juvenile legal system? If the DA chooses to charge a youth as an adult, what leeway do you have to send the case back to juvenile court?
Well, let me say this. Unfortunately, based on the law, which is Article 305 of the Children's Code, I do not have any discretion to send the case back to juvenile court if the district attorney decides that he wants to charge a kid, I'm gonna say a kid, as an adult. It's out of my hands. But what I do have an ability to do is I can make sure that the kid, I can decide where he's physically housed. And if I'm in a position to determine where a kid is going to be housed, I think they fare better in a juvenile justice center than going to OJC around adult inmates. And so, and I know Brother Goodwin is doing a great job with teaching these juveniles at the Travis Hill School. They're doing an awesome job. They're the only public school that has shown improvement out of any of the New Orleans public schools. So, unfortunately, I can't send the case back. I have to follow the law, but I can decide where the kid is housed. And I'm not going to be housing kids in no OJC with no adults. And
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Attorney Levine, your turn.
And I just, please don't include this in my time. I just want to mention that, and perhaps it is different for Mr. Roché, but I don't see the time clock. So that's the reason why I actually am not conforming to any time requirements. So if that's possible to see the time clock, that would be great. If not, then you can just cut me off when I go over.
We have human time clocks.
Okay, okay,
go.
okay, good. Okay, good.
I've got a stopwatch going, but sorry.
So the answer to the question is no, we don't have any discretion. Cases are randomly allocated to us in each individual sections, and that includes cases in which the DA's office has determined that a juvenile should be tried as adult. What I will say is that I think that the answer to juvenile crime, especially where you have cases where people are not hurt but property is hurt, I don't think it's a new program. I don't think that we have to bring in new funding, which we don't have for a new program. I think that the programs that we have in community are underutilized. And I think specifically that, we just don't have referrals. As a judge, I would like to hire a social worker. No judge has hired a specific social worker in their courtroom in order to get community-based, peer-based support and programs. And, as a judge, you can demand a number of things. First of all, during the pendency of a case, you can demand that that someone who is younger, let's say 18, who is in the court, can be required to be part of these community-based programs and report back to the court. You can also call in parents, make sure the parents and family members are part of the proceeding, which is true accountability. And that is absolutely something that I am going to be requiring and requesting. And, you know, we have the high school equivalency exam that is very underutilized. It's run by YEP, it's run by Delgado. Very rarely do judges actually require folks that have not finished their high school equivalency to be a part of that program. What we know is that crime and illiteracy is absolutely related, and that the higher the literacy rate, the lower the crime rate goes. We also have programs like Liberty's Kitchen and New Orleans Career Center and Cafe Reconcile and Louisiana Green program, and they're all underutilized because we are not doing the referrals to these programs that youth really need.
Thank you for that. That is sort of an oxymoron when I think about it. Youth tried as adults because they're not adults. But anyway, I digress. Let's go on to some of the other questions that the Pillars of Justice and Beyond provided. What role can you as a judge, if you're elected in the criminal court, play in reducing the reliance on bail bondsmen as opposed to using the court-based bail program? Simone, you start, and then we'll go back. Did you hear me?
I have. I'm very proud to say that I have accepted no money from bail bondsmen. I believe that my one opponent that is part of this debate is probably in the same spot. And, you know, for me, bail reform is absolutely key. So what bail reform is that there's people that are released with no conditions. There are people that are released with conditions, which is what I was referring to, community-based programs or check-ins with the court. And then that certain people are remanded. And remanded means that there's no amount of money that can be paid in order to release individuals. There's no cash bail, there's no bondsman that can actually pay. And that is important because we need to ensure that no matter how wealthy somebody is, that they can't be released compared to somebody that does not have the means to be released. And what we know is that certain individuals need a stop. They need a rest. They need to have a moment, and they can't be released. As a murder prosecutor, as a homicide prosecutor, as a sex crimes prosecutor, as a former crime victim, what I know is that sometimes people get involved in retaliatory circles, and that incapacitation, the inability to recommit crimes when bail is revoked is absolutely important. It should be the minority of the cases, but when I walk in the community, as I did in the March Against Crime with a church in Central City this weekend, and we pray on every single corner where somebody was shot and murdered and killed, we know that the community wants to have that degree of security and safety, and so that they are not harmed again. Again, it should be the minority of cases, but it's important.
Attorney Leon Roché, what can you do if you are elected to deal with bail bond reform?
Okay, well, let me just say this. I do not understand how the amount of money someone has correlates to if the person is dangerous or not. And so with this system, unfortunately, the legislature has set this up, but you have a system where basically if you are poor or you don't have enough money, then you sit in jail. I've had clients who've sat in jail on $1,000 bond, like they couldn't come up with $100, and they sitting in jail, you know, for months. And if you sit in jail for months, you lost your house, you lost your car, you lost maybe custody of your kids. You lose all your personal belongings, all this stuff thrown out on the curb. So I don't understand, why we base bond on how much money someone has, because the flip side of that is you can have someone who has a lot of money who can be extremely dangerous. Look at what happened with the poor guy that was driving, the Uber driver, that got killed just recently. So the amount of money that somebody has, to me, doesn't correlate to if the person is dangerous or not. And the amount of money someone doesn't have also doesn't correlate to how dangerous person is not. So that's my issue with the bail system. But but what I can do to try to reduce the reliance on bail bonds, people, is if it's non-crimes of violence, we do RORs, where you just release the person on reconnaissance. We can also do a cash bond where, someone just pays like a cash bond to the court rather than going through a bail bondsman. So there's different things I can do like that. But unfortunately, some offenses like some crimes require a money bond for the person to be released. So I would have to do an individual assessment with the factors that the code allows to determine, what type of bond we should get. And let me just say this last thing. I believe in using arrest and ankle monitors as a special condition of bond, because that way somebody can be home and if they come outside of the home, then I want the bail bonds company to notify me immediately if the person violates the perimeter, and I will call the authorities to have them rearrested myself. But I want to give people a chance to be able to stay home rather than in jail, especially on nonviolent crimes. But if you are out on bond and you commit and you're arrested for committing a crime of violence, I think at that point we need to look to maybe revoking your bond, because we don't want the repetitive cycle, of people bonding out, getting arrested, bonding out, getting arrested, bonding out, getting arrested. I think that also causes detriment to our community.
Okay, and you can answer this next question, and then I'll send it to Attorney Levine.
Yes, ma'am.
What lessons have you taken or changes you want to make based on your trial experience?
Yes, so let me just say, okay, so I think that we need to make a safe space for jurors during the voir dire process, when the attorneys are questioning jurors about their potential bias or prejudice. I think we need to have a safe space for jurors to feel like they can express how they really feel, because oftentimes, some jurors, in the whole setting where everyone is in the room, 50 people in the courtroom, sometimes jurors don't want to really say how they really feel about an issue. And it's very important that we understand exactly how a juror feels about a particular issue to make sure that they can be impartial and that there's no bias. So that's one thing that I'd say. And another thing I'd say is I'm going to admonish lawyers if they make improper comments in front of jury. I've faced that as a defense attorney, where a prosecutor will say, I'll give you an example. I objected to some evidence being admissible, and the prosecutor says loud in front of the jury, "Oh, I know you don't want the jury to see that." And I'm like, whoa, like that's totally improper. It's not that I don't want the jury to see that, it's that there's an objection on the admissibility of the evidence, and this is a ruling that the judge needs to make. And so, if I'm the judge and I hear an attorney say something out of the box like that could possibly prejudice the jury, I'm going to admonish that attorney, and I'm going to give a curative instruction to the jurors to disregard what he said. And another thing, I think that attorneys should, when they make their objection, just object and then approach the bench, and then we'll discuss what the objection is. Because sometimes attorneys, and I ain't gonna lie, I've done this myself, sometimes an attorney will do what's called a running objection, where they'll say a bunch of stuff in the objection that could prejudice the jury. And so we need to object and then approach the bench, and then we'll talk about it, rather than you making this long running objection where you're inflaming and prejudicing the jury before the judge can rule on the objection.
Thank you very much. Attorney Levine, same question. What changes would you?
I'm sorry, could you just repeat the question? Ms. Susan?
Sure. Hold on a second. What lessons have you taken or changes you want to make based on your trial experience?
So a number of them. First of all, I think what is incredibly important is that we have a professional court. What we have right now is we have defense attorneys who do not want to come to court because they are not in a professional court. And we have prosecutors who do not want to come to court because they are not in a professional court. I remember when I was a public defender that I had been yelled at and screamed at by judges based on their prejudice against my clients, because it was my clients that they disliked, and me standing up for my clients got in the way of the abuse that they had really shown. And as a prosecutor, I have definitely faced my fair degree of unprofessionalism in the court. And so I would be careful to admonish attorneys, because what you need is you need to have a professional relationship with the individuals that come in front of the court, and you want them to be able to feel comfortable, to be able to ensure that you have a fair trial. So that's one thing. Again, I have to come back to my experience at Court Watch NOLA. As the director of Court Watch NOLA, what I had seen was that human beings are not heard in court. I joined the DA's office because I wanted to ensure the victims had different choices than just a maximum a number of years in jail for the person that had actually hurt them. And I think that we need to hear from community. I want to keep the cameras on. Right now, there's judges that are trying to turn the cameras off, or they don't allow for the cameras at all. The cameras were put up during COVID so that defendants would be able to come and be part of the proceeding without having some kind of health risk. I want to keep those cameras up. I want to ensure that community feels safe in my court. I want to make sure that victims have a different space as is required by the law in court. And I want to, above all, make community understand that this is going to be a court that listens to the community. It is not going to be a court that disregards community. It's not going to be a court that disregards human beings. And so those are really, some of the most important things that I would say. I'll give one
That's
example.
time.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so statistics show in Louisiana that the majority of people incarcerated are African Americans or people of color. So I will start with you, Simone. Why is that? Or why do you think that is?
I think that it's based on discriminatory policing. And I think that that's been proven, established over and over and over again. I think that policing occurs in African-American neighborhoods more than it occurs in Caucasian neighborhoods. And I think also that, again, victims don't have choices. Victims don't have resources. So part of the issue is that in addition to the majority of those people that are arrested being African-American, the majority of crime victims in New Orleans are also African-American, and we don't have an alternative as individuals that are crime victims, but to call the police or ignore the abuse or ignore the terror that actually occurs. I was one of the individuals at Court Watch NOLA that was trying to set up an alternative program so that it would not be police that turn up when there's emergent mental health crises that occurs, and then instead it be mental health treatment providers that actually occur at the scene and the location. But we need to make sure also that community is part of the process of making their neighborhoods safe. So I mentioned this demonstration I was a part of. This was a community that walked through the whole community and informed the whole community that they were going to hold their community accountable. So the people that terrorized their neighborhood, that they were going to hold them accountable. And it's a very, very different neighborhood and a community when it's the community holding people accountable and not the police. So that's the answer to the question.
Time. Okay, Attorney Roché, why is it? Could that have anything to do? Would that have anything to do the fact that African Americans and people of color make up the largest amount of people in prison? Does that have anything to do also with the criminal justice system and the judges? Why do you think that is?
Well, let me just say this. As an African-American male who is from New Orleans and has come up in this city, I know what it's like to be racially profiled. I know what it's like to be thrown up against the police car when you're simply walking home from the football game because the police say you fit the description of somebody who committed some robbery. And it was only because I didn't have earrings in my ear that I was let go that night, and I've faced other times just walking down the street, I've been harassed by the police. So, the racial profiling is a big part of the problem. and also the so-called high crime neighborhood, which just so happens to coincide with Black neighborhoods. You know, if you're in a high crime neighborhood and you give somebody DAP, then they're gonna say that was a hand-to-hand transaction, and they're gonna say they got probable cause or reasonable suspicion rather to come detain you. And then and it's a snowball effect. Next thing you know, you go into jail. So, you know, this notion that all African American neighborhoods are high crime neighborhoods, the racial profiling of the police, because, you know, I've had cases where my client, if he looked at the police, they said that was suspicious. If he walked by and didn't look at the police, they said that was suspicious. You know, it's almost you danged if you do, you're danged if you don't. And so the over policing of our neighborhoods, the classification of high crime neighborhoods where we live, and the racial profiling. You know, my mom used to tell me, if it's me and 3 of my friends riding in a car, if it's 3 black men or 4 black males riding in a car, we know it's more likely we gonna get stopped. And it's more likely somebody's gonna end up going to jail, whether we doing anything wrong or not. And so, you know, and also if you see a black person and a white person in a certain neighborhood, the police will think that that's something suspicious. So I think we need better training for police officers to stop racially profiling, you know, people, and stop taking innocent action as reasonable suspicion to believe that there's some type of crime afoot, to then go detain someone and, you know, and harass them, you know. And I'm a victim of that myself, because I know what it's like to be racially profiled. I know what it's like to be thrown up against a police car. And so, you know, that's why I'm running for this seat, because I want to fight to prevent those type of things from happening to
That's
people that
time.
look like me.
Okay, I'm going to ask one more question of both of you guys, and then I will turn it over to Brooke or whomever, one of the pillars, to open up let the people in the chat room articulate their questions or read those questions. So the last question I'm going to give you guys is, who or what are your 5 largest financial supporters and orders of contributions? You can start, Mr. Attorney Roché.
Okay, well, let me say this. My father died September 27th.
The bylaw said they have to submit them to me 30 days.
I don't know, just ignore that. I don't know what that is.
Okay.
If somebody in a Zoom bombing, don't worry about it.
My father passed away, Leon Roché Sr. He passed away on September 27, 2020. And when he passed away, he left me with some property. I sold some of that property and I got some money. I had a decision. Do I buy a new Corvette or do I run for judge? I decided to run for judge. I put $50,000 of my own money into my campaign. So I'm the biggest contributor to my campaign, because I believe in myself, and the people in New Orleans need me. They need a fair judge who understands where they come from. Now, as far as the other contributors, I don't know. You know, you can go to the ethicsla.gov and you can see who my contributors are. You know, as a judicial candidate, I cannot accept donations. I don't know who's donating, but I will tell you that I'm the biggest donor to my campaign, because I believe in myself and I know that what I stand for is right, and I want to do right by our community. And I'm looking forward to bringing fair trials and fair proceedings to our people to reverse the horrible course that Louisiana has been on with being the incarceration capital of the world.
Okay, Attorney Levine.
So what Leon had mentioned is correct. As judicial candidates, we are not allowed to solicit funds. However, what we are allowed to do is we are allowed to sign off on our campaign paperwork. And so that is the reason why I'm able to state the top funders to my campaign. So the top funder to my campaign is myself. As many people in Justice and Beyond know, since I sort of lived through that experience with this forum, my mama has died and my daddy has died. And so I also have inheritance money that has been given to me that has formed the basis of the campaign. The second top campaign donor is my sister. And the third campaign donor is my other sister and my blood sister. And then Matt Wisdom is another top campaign contributor. and Susan Hess is the other one, and they're my two finance directors.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. Is Valerie? Valerie, are you there? Valerie,
Yes, I'm here. Yes,
Okay,
hello, everybody.
there you are. Okay, you want to do the chat room questions?
Yes, ma'am. Let me put my glasses on, y'all. You know, gotta get my glasses. Okay. Okay, we have a question from Mr. Sweet. Well, he asked about the contributors. So you answer that question. Did you have another question, Mrs. Sweet? Who is missing? Okay, Mr. Sweet, Miss Cece had answered the question who is missing from the race is Miss Kelly. She answered it at the beginning. We did send her an invitation, but she had a previous engagement. That's why she couldn't make it. And that is answer your last question. Did you have another question, Mr. Sweet? Then we're gonna go to Miss Brooke.
Go back to this contribution stuff because we should just talk straight, right? What is the link that these contributions can be found?
If you go to ethics.la.gov, it should show you who all contributed to each candidate's campaign.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the answer. Did that answer your question, Mr. Sweet?
I'll tell you in about 30 seconds.
Okay. Next, we have Miss Brooke.
Yeah, Simone, I just wanted to find out more about the neighborhood that went around and did things on their own. And I want to know, is that still working? Did it change things perceivably? And how much did it change things?
So this demonstration occurred this weekend, but I do know that the demonstration is a regular demonstration. I'm a big believer in community policing, and I don't mean community policing in the police department, but community policing. I actually met the father of my children by suing a major police department along on stop and frisk issues. And I'm a big believer in this community policing model where community is active and keeps their own neighbors accountable. And so I think that the answer is that it's really yet to be seen, but I will go back to the church and ask them, Brooke, and really give you an answer directly from their mouth.
Okay. We have Miss Cece, we have someone on the iPhone. They want me to ask the question. So the question is recognizing both candidates have been laboring for years in their respective positions. However, it has been clear that New Orleans has not invested in its people, especially Black youth, be it education, recreation, support of families, counseling, and etc. Aside from your job, how have you addressed these deficits in society to prevent our children being criminalized before they leave elementary school? So, Miss Cece, how did you ask what order did you ask for each candidate? Did you ask Mr. Leon or Miss Emma? You're on mute, Miss Cece. I'm sorry.
Let's start with Mr. Roché, Attorney Roché, because some Attorney Levine, I just want to call her Simone so bad. Attorney Levine just answered the question. So, Attorney Roché.
Okay, yes. Before I became a lawyer, I was a substitute teacher at a school called Levine, and I chose to go to Levine because it was a school, it was a predominantly African-American school, and I wanted to go teach our youth. I've been a speaker at many different schools, and universities where I've spoke about practicing law and about what led me to want to be a lawyer and things of that nature. I also participated in the ARB program, which is a program Judge Arthur Hunter started, Alan Ray Bolin, where we go into high schools and we teach high school kids how to practice law, and they have a competition at the end. I'm a member of Omega Psi Phi fraternity, and I do community service with my fraternity, where we have toy drives and food drives, blood drives, things of that nature. I hope to be a role model for young African-American males. You see, I have my hair braided. They tried to tell me I should cut my hair. I'm not cutting my hair because I'm proud of my hair. And the way I wear my hair has nothing to do with what I know in my head. So, I hope to be a role model for young Black males. That's what I've been all of my life. And that's what I hope to continue to be. I've given back to my community. I mean, I know you said don't include work, but as a public defender, I've defended the public, which, has been most of my clients look like me. Let's be honest, and so I hope to be a role model. I've been active in my community. I'm also active in my church, the Mount Zion Missionary Baptist Church, underneath the Reverend Nolie Paul Jr. He passed away in 2020, but that's been my church my whole life. We also do outreach through our church. So I've been active and involved in the community pretty much, all my life. And I hope to be a role model for young Black males to see that, there's something else out there. We can, I know our children are smart and bright. We just need opportunities to shine our light.
Thank you. Attorney Levine.
So one of the things that sometimes people know about me, sometimes they don't, is I am a referee for USA Boxing. I'm a former competitive fighter, and for me, what's really incredibly important is to work with young women, particularly women of color, to treat and to work with them so that they can defend themselves, and so that they have the strength and the confidence in order to face the regular battles that they have to face in their life. For me, that is a complete joy. And for me, it is also such a challenge as a child victim of rape to work with so many women that are challenged by really that barrier that people face as young women in our community, and particularly African-American young women in our community. So that's one thing that I would say. I'm also been honored to have been asked to be part of the Dillard Center for Racial Justice, to be on that board, to be involved in the programming, to work with students, to speak to students. When I was the director of Court Watch NOLA, we had brought in, so when I first came in, we had a program with students from Tulane, and that was really it. And I ensured that we had programs, and we worked with court watchers and volunteers who were from SUNO, from Delgado, from Dillard, and really worked with programs like YEP that does work with marginalized kids that are constantly facing the challenges of our system. And that is incredibly, sorry, go ahead.
All right, I'm turning it back over to Valerie.
Okay. Okay, we have another question by Ms. Jones. Ms. Jones, I took your hand down because I have you on my list. So you can ask your question, or you want me to read it? Where you at, Ms. Jones? Ms.
I'm
Donnie?
right here. Hi
Okay.
there.
Okay, you can ask. I took your hand down. I'm going to tell everyone, if I take your hand down, that means I have you on my list, and you will be next. So Ms. Jones will be the last one. Then Ms. CC, I'm gonna turn it over to you because I'm looking at the time, and we want each candidate to do us a nice closing. So Ms. Jones will be the last one. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I didn't really notice you had taken my hand down, actually. I was parking instead. Okay, so hi everybody. My question is, I know of an incident where a man, public defender, became a DA and didn't recuse himself from the man's case. So his public defender became his prosecutor. With that knowledge, if you were privy to that knowledge in your court, would you have allowed that DA to prosecute? As a judge, is there anything you could have done in that case?
Okay, Attorney Roché.
Absolutely not. If the prosecutor was the former public defender on the same case, if I
On the
understand
same
your question, yes, no, absolutely not. No, that definitely should have been a motion to recuse, because in that case, the public defender would have intimate knowledge about the defense, about the, especially if he's had conversations with the client, with his, so he's got, confidential information, and certainly he would use that confidential information against him when prosecuting him. So absolutely not. A motion to recuse can be filed by the judge, the defense attorney, or the prosecutor. And so there definitely should have been a recusal in that case.
Okay, thank you, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm trying to
Yeah.
step it up because they're telling me about the time now. So Attorney Levine, your response.
So again, there should have been a motion to recuse that should have been filed, but I would have taken it one step further. One of the assets in having a judge on the bench that has experience on the prosecution side as well as the defense is the right person to call in the prosecution's office when you see such misconduct from occurring. And so not only should there have been a motion to recuse that should have been filed, but I would have called the chief of trials. And if the chief of trials had not responded, I would have called the first assistant. And if the first assistant hadn't responded, I would have called the district attorney himself. The court watch NOLA, what we really tried to do was create functional relationships with stakeholders. I still think functional relationships are really the way to go in order to create reform and change in our courts.
Okay, thank you. So let's let you wrap up. What's the last thing you want to tell the audience? And then I'll go to Attorney Roché. Your number, your ballot number, whatever else you want to say, this is your chance to conclude your last 2 minutes.
So my number is 11. My name is Simone Levine. I have really had the honor of presenting in front of Justice and Beyond for the last 10 years, so actually over a decade. I have been a pillar of Justice and Beyond. And, it's for me incredibly important that people understand the asset of having a balanced, fair judge that's going to be up on the stand. When there was a man that shot a homeless person, it was a man from Oklahoma that shot a homeless person in the French Quarter and screamed Aryan Nation before he shot that homeless person, I was the person that stood in the way of that individual getting a plea and that case getting dismissed. There is a role for the prosecution. There is a role for the defense, and it has to be balanced in the court, and community absolutely has to be served. I was the director of Court Watch NOLA when.
Hold on, Simone. I'm understanding that we have more time. So before you do your final wrap up, let me ask you one more question, and I'll ask Attorney Roché one more question. So my last question for really. The last question is, what are your top 3 priorities if you are elected to this Section 8 of Criminal District Court? Top 3.
So for me, the top one, the first priority is to make sure we have a community-centered court, and that community knows it is safe to come to court. It is safe to be a part of court. We at Court Watch NOLA we were trying to ensure the victims could testify and provide information at bail hearings so the victims could be heard. No, this person should be released. They will return to court. They don't face a public security risk, or no, they should be incarcerated. So to make sure that that community knows that it is safe in court. I've been on murder trials. I've led murder trials where members of the audience have threatened members of the jury. Safety in the court is absolutely integral because it affects community. A community has to be part of this process, because if community is not part of this process, community doesn't have confidence in the system. I think that it's incredibly important to have community-based programming. Community-based programming, especially when it comes to churches, where it is peer-to-peer community-based programming, is absolutely integral. I don't see that occurring in our courts. I think that victims need that programming. I think witnesses need that programming. And I think that defendants need that programming. I'm very proud of the fact that I, along with 2 or 3 other individuals, we got over $1 million given to the Trauma Recovery Center at the University Medical Center for crime victims to receive receive money for trauma care. So, and we know that defendants oftentimes are crime victims themselves and they've not received that treatment, and that's integral. The third thing that I would say is to ensure that we have successful cases. So successful cases is where a victim gets closure and a defendant never returns back into the criminal justice system. And that means, again, that we have community that is a part of the process and that we don't affect the larger family members. I would like to apply for a grant so that the children of defendants and victims and witnesses that are in court because their parents are there don't have to be in court, that they can be someplace else in childcare facilities while their parents are in court, and that they receive treatment, especially if their parents are going back or going to jail. So those are my top 3 priorities.
Okay, Attorney Roché, your top 3 priorities should you be elected as judge of Division A Criminal District Court?
Yes, so one of my top priorities, as I mentioned in my opening, is to prevent wrongful convictions. And the reason why this is so important is this is why we need judges that are experienced in Louisiana law and that know criminal law, because the law in Louisiana is different than the law in the other 49 states. And so I want to prevent wrongful convictions. And the way we do that is by making sure we have fair proceedings and fair trials. Again, we don't want a situation where a judge allows some evidence to be admissible that shouldn't have been admissible, or did not suppress a lineup that should have been suppressed, or made the wrong ruling, which led to a person getting wrongfully convicted, so that only when the case goes up to a higher court, on appeal, that they look at it and they say, wait up, the trial judge did this wrong, he did this wrong, he did this wrong. We got to kick this back now. So that's why we need trial judges that know the law, know Louisiana law, to make proper rulings, so that we don't have situations where innocent people are sitting in jail for 10, 20, 30 years before a higher court looks at what happened in the trial level and determines that the judge made some inaccurate rulings. The judge is the gatekeeper on the trial level. And so I have the experience because I've practiced law for 13 years solely in criminal district court. So I want to prevent wrongful convictions. That's one. The second thing is I want to use the specialty courts that we have to provide alternate means of sentencing for people with non-crimes of violence, our veterans without resources, people with drug addiction, and also people with mental illness. We don't need to be putting those people in jail. We need to try to give them the resources that are already set up through the specialty courts to try to help people get back on their feet rather than just throwing them away in jail. So I'm going to use the specialty courts we have. Oh, and the reentry program is an awesome program that Judge Hunter and Judge Lori White started. I also want to use the reentry program to help, people get trade, jobs, and housing. So that's the second thing. And the third thing that I want to do is I want to address the problem with our juveniles. I get asked all the time, what are you going to do about the juveniles? I want to create a boot camp program. We need to bring boot camp back so we can show some discipline to these and use our veterans to help bring some discipline to our youth. And try to see if I can have a program where we take inmates who are doing time, give them an incentive to talk to juveniles that's doing time, to try to dissuade them from going down the path they went down, because they can talk to them in a way to tell them, look, I know what you're doing. I've done that. Here's where you're headed. You don't want to come where I'm at, and you need to, try to do something different because this is where you're headed. So those are my 3 things: prevent wrongful convictions, use the specialty courts we have to help people get on their feet, and to try to address the problem with our juveniles by trying to fashion either a boot camp program and another program to have inmates talk to juveniles that's doing time. Those are the three big things to me that I would like to bring to the bench if I'm blessed to get elected.
Okay, we'll go back to Attorney Levine for your wrap up. I'm told that you can have 5 minutes, and we'll do the same with Attorney Roché.
Thank you so much. So I am so proud to be in front of this forum. It has been over 10 years since I've been presenting. First as the Deputy Police Monitor, we presented on the Wendell Allen case, amongst other things. Wendell Allen was a young Black man who was a college student. He was shot and killed in his home in Gentilly. I was the Deputy Police Monitor at the time, and I was the individual that sat through the interview where there was a police officer that said he had body-worn camera. When I went to the investigator on the case, the individual officer said, no, he did not say that there was body-worn camera. And I had to fight to make sure that that body-worn camera was put into the criminal file. And that police officer was the first police officer that was convicted of a homicide charge in the Deep South for decades. It was before Ferguson. It was a white police officer. And the mother of Wendell Allen, Tasha Allen, has become a close friend, and she is in my most recent video that's just come out. I presented on that case. I presented on a number of cases in front of Justice and Beyond, and I'm really proud of making sure that I knew what was going on with the community, and I put that at the center of my work at either Court Watch NOLA or at the Police Monitor's office, or frankly, at the DA's office. I have been endorsed by a number of people. I'm very proud of that endorsement. Judge Bagneris has endorsed me. Judge Miriam Waltzer has endorsed me. Susan Hudson has endorsed me. Devontae Lewis has endorsed me. I'm not going to go through the whole list, but most recently, the New Orleans Bar Association poll has come out. And I also won the New Orleans Bar Association poll with 60% of those people that were voting. I also won the endorsement of the Alliance for Good Government and also the Forum for Equality, which is the only PAC which is dedicated to LGBTQ plus rights in the city. I'm very proud of my record. I think that we need judges that are going to be able to see it on both sides. We're going to need judges that have experience with the law, but also that are able to think outside of the box. Our system is falling apart. Community hasn't been listened to for a very long time, and we need alternative models. And more importantly, even than the alternative models, is we need to see the programs that we have right here in New Orleans that we have, which is community-based programming for victims and for witnesses and also for defendants. Something that I would say, which is incredibly important, is that I have 22 years in criminal law, 22 years of practicing as a criminal lawyer. I've been a public defender once. I've been a private defense attorney once. I've been a prosecutor twice. And I am incredibly proud to not only bring together progressive community, but also middle of the road community, and community that has advocated for safety first. And we need both of those things really on the bench. The other thing that I would say, which is incredibly important, is forums like this. So we have both, my opponent and I have both spoken at length and in detail about some of the legal issues that are going on in court. It is so important for a forum like this to understand that they have a say in this process, that we need to elect different leaders, that we have to ensure that community knows that legal language should not stand in their way, and that we should stand against the processes and the procedures that are going to lead to wrongful conviction. And groups like Court Watch NOLA, and I see two of my fellow colleagues, former colleagues that are on the call as well, they are the ones that add to that dialogue and ensure that we as people here in New Orleans, we as community are heard in those courts. In my court, people will always be heard. Community will also be centered, will always be centered. Thank you for this opportunity.
Did you want to give your ballot number again?
Number 11, Simone Levine. I so appreciate the support and the opportunity to speak today. Oh, and then the last thing I'm also going to say, I think I still have a little bit of time, is that I am a straight shooter. You will never hear me talk differently in front of Justice and Beyond versus WDSU Hot Seat versus any other forum that I am in. I say the same exact thing to all different groups and all different community. And so you can depend on me when I get on the bench to be able to do the things which I have talked about and not act differently than what I promised you here today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Attorney Simone Levine, and we'll go to Attorney Leon Roché, the second.
Okay, yes, well, thank you for this opportunity to address everybody and to be heard. This is my first time running for office. I'm not a career politician. I'm just a lawyer that has practiced criminal law in district court for the last 13 going on 14 years, exclusively fighting for the citizens and in some cases non-citizens of New Orleans, the city that I'm from, that I love, that I'm gonna be at. I'm gonna be here and I'm gonna die here. Love this city. And I'm not running for this seat because of who I know. I'm running for this seat because of what I know. And what I know is how to practice law to ensure that every person's rights are upheld. And by every person, I mean both the person charged with an offense and the victims and the victim's family of offense. Both sides have important rights that need to be upheld. And I know those rights because I've been practicing law, like I say, for the last almost 14 years in this city. I've always been in good standing with the bar. I've never been suspended from the practice of law. And I look forward to making sure that every person receives fair proceedings and a fair trial. I'm gonna move cases efficiently in a manner so that the person sitting in jail doesn't have to languish in jail, just waiting for their day in court. And also so the victims and the victim's family don't have to wait years and years to get the justice that they seek. You know, I've been endorsed by Devontae Lewis. I've got a suggestible favorable by the AFL-CIO. I'm endorsed by the Mail Carriers Union. I'm endorsed by the Musicians Union. I'm endorsed by UTNO. I'm endorsed by the Vote Organization and Norris Henderson personally. And the Vote Organization is an awesome organization that is fighting on the front line for the rights of, you know, formerly incarcerated people and for our community. It's an awesome organization that I'm extremely proud to be endorsed by Vote and Norris Henderson. And I'm also endorsed by the NOLA Defenders, and I'm endorsed by Ben Crump himself. Ben Crump is an icon in civil rights, and he recognized in me that I'm also a fighter for our rights, for our criminal rights. And so, you know, I love New Orleans. I'm from New Orleans. Like I say, I'm going to continue to fight for our people and for our community to try to bring safe streets. I've got ideas that I want to implement for our juveniles because I know that, you know, we've got some issues we need to address with our juveniles. I look forward to being a role model to our young Black males in our community. I've always walked with integrity. And so I'm asking for your vote because if you vote for me, you're voting for change. You're voting for someone who's not beholden to career politicians. I'm beholden to the people. The people decide who's going to be their judge, not these career politicians. I'm not beholden to them. And so I'm beholden to you, the people. My name is Leon Roché II, and I put Leon Roché because that's my dad's name. And I'm proud to carry my dad's name. May he rest in peace. And I'm ballot number 12. And again, I'm asking you for your prayers. I'm asking you for your support, and I'm asking you for your vote. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
I would like to thank both of the candidates, Attorney Simone Levine, Attorney Leon Roché II, and I'm going to turn it back over to Valerie, one of the pillars, so you guys can wrap up everything. And thank you for the opportunity of asking the questions and moderating the forum. I really appreciate it. I've learned a lot about the candidates.
Yes, this forum was very, I want to say, enlightened. We got to know both of the candidates, professionally and personally, because you all told your own personal stories that made it real. You all made us see you all as a person, as a working hard person, that you are committed. And that's what the public need to see. Our judges, our political arena as people. We thank you all for that. Attorney Roché and Attorney Levine. As always, Miss CC Campbell, rock. You one sister that rock. We really appreciate you and your support.
May I say one thing?
Yes, ma'am. Yes,
I
ma'am.
will be moderating discussions with WBOK, moderating forums. So I guess I'll be speaking to these candidates again. And so that's going to be on the 21st to 22nd and 23rd of March. It's next week sometime. So yeah, please tune in. I'm sure they would want everyone to tune in.
Okay. I'm sure we'll get that information for you so we can spread that word out through our network. And we ask everyone to send it out to your network as well, because we still want to hear from our candidates, because this is a very important election. Please, all the elections are very important, because there is a way that we can get our voice heard by our votes. You want to change? Well, you speak with your vote. You ask me. That's my personal thing. But nevertheless, we want to close out. We had 6:27. I'm going to ask, do any one of the pillars, do y'all want to have a last I want to say last moment to speak, because we have 3 minutes. So any one of the pillars have any remarks before we close out? If not, we are, everybody, please put your contact information in the chat if you want to be added to the just be on contact list. If you have an announcement, we're asking that you add your also add your announcement in the chat. The next forum will be announced on our Facebook page, and also was also sending out through our email. So to keep everybody updated, as usual, we thank everybody for joining us. We're asking everybody to be safe, keep your heads up, and keep walking and fighting for justice. We're gonna close out with a closing prayer. We're gonna ask if is Mr. Richard on here? He might not be on here. Mr. Richard not on here? Oh, yes. Thank you, Mr. Richard. We're going to ask Mr. Richard, would he close us out, please?
Let us bow our heads in prayer. Gracious Lord God, giver of all good gifts, our creator, you live within us and you give us life. Help us to share the life you give us and to do into contact with. Bless us and keep us always. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Amen. He got cut off, but he sure kept on going, didn't it? That's what you have to do. That's what we're asking our candidates to keep on going. Everybody have a good night and be safe.
Good night.